Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Paal15 Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Gray, and today we're having a very special episode of our C series. In these episodes, we talk to leading figures who are driving the B2B technology sector. We'll be delving into their roles, gathering their views on achieving growth in the sector, also finding out a little bit more about the person behind the job title. I'm joined once again by Martin, CEO and co-founder of Paal15. Welcome back, Martin. How are you doing?
Oh, good. Thanks, Matt. Excited about today's episode.
Yes, definitely. I guess it's our first C series proper. We're really kind of excited to get into our guest's mind. And I think it's time to introduce that guest for today's episode. We're joined by Mark Johnston, CMO of Matillion, a data productivity cloud platform used by some of business's best data teams across the world, including Cisco, Western Union, Slack, and many others. Now, Mark began his career as a software developer before spending 14 years at Microsoft, where he became a rising star in the company, contributing to the success of some of the company's biggest enterprise products, including Azure and Office 365. From Microsoft, he moved to cloud business intelligence platform Domo, helping scale revenues and moving the company into leadership positions across market analysts. Finishing at Domo as interim CMO, he took the role of CMO at Matillion 2 years ago, and we're delighted to have him joining us for today's episode. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Matt. Looking forward to the conversation.
Brilliant. It's great to have you here. Let's kick off straight away by delving into your kind of experience at Microsoft first. You had an amazing career there, was a real rising star, and you became director of partner programs at Microsoft at quite a young age. But then you left for Domo, which was at the time quite a small, exciting startup based in Utah. I guess we want to know why. What made you make that switch?
I blame Martin, to be honest with you. We'll come on to that in the conversation. It's his fault, not mine.
As always.
Yeah, it does look good. Maybe it's worth kind of go like a little bit about that background first, and why I kind of ultimately made this sort of move from the hyperscaler world of technology with Microsoft to the kind of startup world where it's very, very different. First thing, I'm not your marketer's marketer. As you said, I started in software development. I'm a techie that ended up in marketing and business roles of various kinds. And ultimately, that's what I care about. I care about that intersection of really good technology, typically enterprise technology, how marketing can help drive the business forward, whether that's positioning, strategy, or pipe generation or awareness. And my time through Microsoft, I kind of saw it like getting scout badges. I wasn't fortunate enough, or didn't make the decision to go do an MBA, but I didn't feel like I needed to, because I worked at this amazing company that gave me great leaders, that gave me great opportunities to go learn things. And I kind of got all the scout badges that I felt I could get without moving to Redmond in Washington in the US. And in the latter part of my time at Microsoft, and this is where Martin's to blame, I was in the partner team, and we were starting to do a lot of work with Paal15 and with partners who were much smaller, much more innovative, trying to build products or services or propositions and take them to market. And I always got really excited about doing those projects in that role. I got to like nearly the 15-year mark, and that's a lifetime. I met my wife at Microsoft, and my friends at Microsoft as well. I was cut me through, and you would see Microsoft's colors on its logo on my skin. I just sort of got this itch to go try something new. And at that point, as a lot of these opportunities come around, I met a guy called Ian, who is the leader of Domo in Europe. And I was like, this is really cool technology. It's right in the space that I like, which is enterprise sort of applications and platforms. The deal was, I was walking away from having everything, all the people, the big organization, all the dollars, all the brand, all the influence in a big company. And I walked out and I had nothing. It was just me, a group of salespeople, and a leader that wanted to let me kind of try something. And so therefore I was like, I'm going to go try that. And that's where I made that leap out of the sort of corporate world of Microsoft and into the startup world of Domo. And honestly, I really deeply value my Microsoft experience, but I think I love that decision that I made it most. This sort of really energized me and given me purpose over the past sort of 7 or so years.
Was it a scary thing, leaving it? I can imagine.
So as you know, I'm Northern Irish, so we kind of swear a lot. So yeah, I won't swear on a podcast, but yeah, it was right. I remember the first day at work. It was a big snowstorm in the UK. We don't do snow well in the UK, and I was traveling with Simon, who was the sales director. He's a friend of mine. So I had some connection with the company, and I was like, I'd never sort of not knowing Microsoft in my career really. And that first day was like getting to the office, trekking through London in the snow, getting to the office and going, what the hell am I here to do? And then figuring it out. I've seen a lot of people leave corporates and go to startups, and some people really struggle and don't make it. I struggled, but I figured out how to adapt and what was the good bit of the corporate world that I can bring to a startup, and what are the new skills that I needed to learn. And so I just started learning those skills. Started talking, working with the headquarter team in Utah, challenging some of the assumptions of how they've worked in the past, trying things, executing, failing at execution, learning, pivoting, and going at it again. And that was the thing that I think kind of settled me down. It probably took me a good 3-6 months to figure that out. But once you do, it's like, okay, I'm now in the right place for me. So yeah, it was definitely scary. It was definitely scary on the first day because it was like literally walking into an office with nobody in it and no blueprint or structure around it.
So, and you mentioned, right? So, Carl, and some skills I could use and some skills I needed to develop. What were those skills? What's the skills you need in a smaller organization, which probably you don't develop that well in a bigger one?
Let me talk about the bigger one first, because what are the skills that are portable? What big companies are doing, and definitely Microsoft's amazing at it, is sort of the process and the accountability that comes from an organization is so big and complex, right? It's a nation state. So you learn about the rhythm of the business and how to get plans in place, work with stakeholders, set accountabilities with people you work with or for you. And you kind of get that ability to sort of like be understanding what good looks like, when it's working, when it's not. Startups are different, and the skills there, it's bias for action, which I'll come back to, and it's part of the depth of my life at Matillion. It's that getting stuff done yourself. You've got to just get it done. At a big company, there's pretty much always someone to do something for you or with you, but at a startup, there ain't any of that. Therefore, you've got to be good at like going from talking about strategy and planning 1 minute, and then 1 minute later, you're like, oh, I've got to go and order the pop-up stand for a field marketing event, or I've got to go and do a press briefing. Like everything sits on your shoulders. And then obviously that spirit of failing fast and learning, that kind of lean startup sort of mentality comes into play, because in a startup, you don't know if it's going to work. At a large corporate, they've got so much scale and success that they know predictably what's going to happen. So those are the two differences in my mind. One, structure, accountability. Startup, pick up the skills of bias for action, getting stuff done, learning from it, and then moving up and down the to-do list, whether that's strategy or tactic. You've got to do all of that at the same time.
And then you've been working Domo in Europe for a while, and at one point you decide then they ask you, hey, can you come to Utah, help us out there? Then that, I guess, is also a change, right? Then you go back to a sort of an HQ in a different country. How was that whole experience?
I spent 15 years saying no to moving to Seattle, and I'm never really sure why. Maybe the weather. But we moved our family to Utah, so where Domo was headquartered, and that's not necessarily the kind of most logical state. It's not on the coast like a lot of expats would relocate to from the UK.
Great skiing.
Great skiing. So positive was I lived at a ski town, so that was a big selling point for my family. The other fun fact was we moved our family and our life 6 weeks before a global pandemic started. So we became locked down in the US, which was actually a very good experience for us as a family. But from a work perspective, going into a headquarter function that was going through a lot of change, the company was clarifying its position in the market around modern BI for all. And a new CRO had come in. So it was my old boss from Europe had moved at the same time. So he and I were close partners together. And therefore it was really a case of figuring out, well, what's this new job? So again, the job that I moved to Domo for was really in the field and a regional role. I've been challenging, like, there's different ways of doing things. This is just really cool ideas. We want some really big customers. And it was then translating that into a new role, which is really product marketing, which is, in my opinion, one of the most important roles in any enterprise software company, which is you sit at that kind of quarterback style role within marketing. Your job is to listen to the field and the sales teams, listen to the customers and the partners that you work with, and then work within marketing to build programs, build messaging, build things that will help drive the business forward. And I got landed into that. And then got locked down for a remote role, obviously during COVID, and then just figured out, how to get stuff done. The same things are true from a big company to a startup. Finding your partners internally, figuring out what the biggest strategic issue is, solving it, going to the next strategic issue, next problem in the to-do list, and then solving it. And that was the name of the game. And over like the period of nearly 2.5, 3 years, we took the company. Whenever I joined, it was 300 million in market cap. When we left it at $3 billion in market cap, and that was just through amazing execution from the field, from marketing, positioning. We became a leader in the Forrester Waves. We became a challenger in the Gartner Magic Quadrant. All that stuff just came from doing those things well, but doing it with good partners in the sales team, good partners at the executive level.
It's also pretty amazing to see the impact then, right? It's like, I can imagine sometimes in big organizations, you're not always seeing the impact, but then if you describe it like this, like tripling that cap, that sounds like
10x in the market cap. Yeah.
10x in the market cap. Yeah. That part is.
Yeah, it's cool, right? It's pretty, it's fun. It's fun. It doesn't come without its challenges. I'm not painting the rosy picture, but it was awesome.
Because how do you then balance, for example? So somehow CMO, you're also setting the direction versus you're still somehow involved in daily operations. Is it also a matter of building a good team to take care of the more operational stuff?
Partially. I think that's a big part of it. Someone described it to me like you're a builder, construction worker. Your job is you've got two houses. One you're renovating and looking after, and then there's another one down the street that you're building. The one that you're renovating or looking after is execution and operations, and you've got to know that that's very different than building a house from the ground up, and that's strategy. Yes. And your job as a leader is to run between the two houses. And so I kind of like that, which is on the execution operations side as a CMO at a startup. It is not I hire a good team and then let them kind of go off and do it and support them. That's a massive part of it. But I've got to roll my sleeves up and get stuff done too. But then the challenge is if I then take that kind of mode of thinking and operation into the other house in terms of strategy, one's working in the business, one's working on the business. I could easily make some really sort of tactical ideas and sort of present them as strategy. And my peers in the executive team are going to go, well, you're just sort of recommending, I don't know, you're recommending a change to the website. Well, that's execution. What I'm really saying is our positioning isn't quite working, or our positioning, we can take advantage of a new market opportunity like AI or whatever. Well, that's the conversation. So it's just knowing which mode you're in, and then being very clear that as your job as a leader is to run between both buildings, both houses, and therefore you've got to have the resilience and the energy to do that. Sometimes that's tiring, sometimes that's energizing, and you just got to be able to keep that pace. And I think it's one of the best jobs that you can do is to sort of be able to do both. If I just did strategy, I think I would get a bit bored because I wouldn't see that tangible effort. If I just did execution and ops, I'd be frustrated because I'd be like, well, that's broken. There's an opportunity over there. Why are we not fixing that? And so the beauty of being the CMO and having the right support from great leaders like the CEO, and your partners in terms of revenue and product and G&A, you get to do both of those things, which is very rewarding.
Yeah, I was going to ask how that interaction with the CEO can work as well. Does it take convincing the CEO to let you balance that kind of operational side and strategy side if they're kind of more seeing you as an executional member of the C-suite? What's that process in terms of getting that balance?
I'm smiling. So I've got one of the best bosses I've ever worked for, a guy called Matthew Scullion. So he's the CEO and co-founder of Matillion. He gives me so much crap for being a marketer in a really funny, like cheeky way. You know, like everyone kind of jokes. It's typically people in the field or sales teams joke like marketing's the crayon department. Marketing's like very fluffy. I was smiling at whenever he's sort of like kind of wants to poke fun at me, he'll make a joke about being fluffy. But I also know what he really values from me and how we work together, and so that's a fun and jest type thing. If you're doing a role in marketing and that's a serious thing, I would be pushing back very hard. But that's not the case with where I am today. So I think that the key thing with me and like the CEO in terms of the role, I think it's a few things that we need to do together. One is ultimately about synthesizing the ideas to come up with what's the differentiation for the product, the service of the company. And that kind of turned up in marketing world as messaging, things that go on websites, into sales collateral, in press releases, all that kind of tactical stuff. But what that really means, in my opinion, is the company aligned behind a strategic narrative? Does the narrative that's sort of codified internally turn up well in marketing, but equally does it turn up well in the sales team and the customer support teams and success teams? But does it turn up in the product roadmap? So, if the product team are off building, A and B, but the strategic narrative says we should be doing X and Y, there's misalignment. And I think the CMO gets to sort of sit in that role where they see all of it, and then they turn it into words on paper. Obviously, that's kind of a big part of our role, but it's about alignment. So I think synthesizing ideas is number one. Number two, sort of as I mentioned, because marketing and the CMO role sits and works really closely with the product organization, the R&D team, product engineering teams, and also works with the field, and also sort of is supported by the G&A functions in terms of finance and people ops. You get to get involved in all of it. We're there to sort of translate and synthesize the roadmap, position it, differentiate it, launch it, enable behind it. But we also know whenever that doesn't work, because we're working closely with the field teams around pipe generation programs or sales blitzes or new offers to go out to customers. And equally, then we're seeing how that turns up internally through internal communications with the way our employees are feeling, the way our internal comms communicates that to the business. But your job is to connect the dots and understand that from the way that the CEO wants to build the business. So I think that's the second one. And then the third one's a reverse one, which is, I work for Matthew, but I also know that Matthew is a massive asset that he can work for me in terms of what we're trying to do with marketing. So I kind of see the CEO as the chief voice of the company officer. He's a spokesperson. He represents our brand. He knows our customers the best. He knows our product strategy the best. He's got the founder story. So I always make sure that I've got a clear contract of how I can leverage that value to what I'm trying to achieve, which therefore ultimately benefits the business. Those are the three things, but it's definitely not about being the fluffy person that does the pretty pictures on the website. That's not what it's about.
And this I find extremely interesting because we've worked with many CEOs, CMOs over the last years. For me, a good CMO is the one who actually speaks business, challenges you on the business, not just the one who executes what is being told at the end, right? And then that's where I think also your absolute skill set sits, like challenging the business, thinking of it, thinking bigger, like, oh, what's the proposition by way? What's the sort of the category we can claim around this? How can we then capture this category? What do we need to do to get there? I think that's something you have a very good skill set in, which I always appreciated, at least.
Yeah, and vice versa. Yeah, that's still your fault, because it's you and I that sort of chat about a lot of those things on WhatsApps and then over coffees or Negronis. But just to kind of maybe make sure it's not just seeing the strategy, the role is also the execution. Like you need to
translating that into execution and being able to execute that. So I agree. But what you see a lot is that CMOs, they have a very executional focus, and I think you need to have some sort of executional focus, because ultimately you need to get things done. But then being able to sort of think business and what's the bigger purpose and how can we change all of that, I think that combination is fairly rare. Which brings me, so I'm just thinking out loud here. So until a year ago, you've always been working in companies where probably growth was the biggest thing to focus on, and not like regard at all costs, but then not at all expenses, at least. It's like you always had like growth as a majority function. And then last year, obviously, was for many companies was a difficult year. I think VC funding got dry, so growth might not be the primary priority. The moment getting profitability, did that change that movement? Did that change part of the dynamics of your job?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think the lines are, your growth at all costs was the market we were in, and now it's all about efficient growth. And as a venture-backed startup, really focusing on how do we make a dent in the universe much bigger than ourselves by helping every data team or data engineer build pipelines. Pipelines for AI, pipelines for analytics. The job is to kind of help achieve that. So it's not like efficiency on its own. It's about efficiency and achieving that bigger picture, that bigger growth objective that we want. And so, the old model didn't work. The old model was spend a ton of money on the top of the funnel, awareness, sponsorships, brand, throw big parties, stick logos on sports or Formula One cars, all that kind of stuff. Throw loads of salespeople at it, throw loads of lead development reps, XDRs, BDRs, SDRs at it, and throw enough, and then obviously you then get the growth. That model doesn't work in this world. Frankly, probably should never have worked. It was probably not a very responsible thing.
That was the next question. Did it ever work?
Yeah. So whenever we do our next company, Martin, we're not going to go take 200 million in investment and just go hire a bunch and sponsor a bunch of things. That doesn't work. So it changed our strategy. I think, like, I'm an engineer, right? Go back to my start of my career. I'm a software developer, so I see everything in my brain as a box or an arrow in some sort of architecture. It's all flow. There's all things that are like connected together, and boxes are like resources, people, programs, activities, and the arrows, the things that connect them. And therefore, whenever there's inefficiency, it's typically the arrows that are the issue. It's how do you then connect that journey together, and you've got the right things connected together. So we invested in a dual funnel approach. We have a new SaaS platform that means we can efficiently find data engineers, given that's who we sort of target, get them the value within our product, and then work them to obviously monetize them and help grow them into something more significant, both in terms of what they get value from the platform and obviously what we can extract value commercially. Then that means that the enterprise model, we call this velocity and value. The velocity motion is that kind of product-led growth, support the sort of user and the buyer get to value quickly with the product. The value motion is about targeting enterprise and mid-market organizations and being much more strategic in how we engage. It's about partnering with our partners like Snowflake or Databricks or Amazon. It's about being multi-threaded in how we engage the people that are connected to the decision-making around our technology in their organizations. That kind of means like the tactics are much more high touch. It isn't just throw volume at it. We've got to be much more orchestrated. We've got to be much more sophisticated in what we say at the right message at the right time to the right person with the right offer. Like that all requires a very different tooling. And so we're on that journey. We're starting to like dial that in, figure out what works, what doesn't. and I'm biased because I'm a data person now. Data is what drives a lot of that decision making. It's not opinion. It's not noisy feedback. It's like literally like optimizing every little bit across the journey. So although it's a tough market, it was a tough market change for everybody. Building muscle is about, tearing the muscle and then rebuilding it. And I think that's the journey that we've been on, which is we're tearing muscle, and then building it back stronger. And again, so I'm very fortunate to have had the opportunity to do that and continue to do that in Matillion today.
Yeah, and I think it helps that Matillion has a super central spot within this whole AI wave, I can imagine. So even that's more exciting, right?
Yeah. It's pretty cool. Everyone, like, I'm sure I think you should probably, I did watch this on a Paal15 podcast. Like, everyone's talking about adding AI. So whatever you do today, just add AI and everything will be good. And I'm sure that's legit. I'm sure that's true for some organizations. But we're lucky in that, what's the enabler for a great AI strategy? Well, it's a great data strategy because it's about using your data with new use cases. Those use cases are not like, today, pre-AI, where analytics, data science, predictive analytics, operational analytics, dashboards, reports. Well, with AI, you've got a whole set of new AI applications, whether it be chatbots or you're doing really sophisticated sort of research, like finding new cures for cancer, all the way, depending on the spectrum of where you're, curing the climate crisis. Like you can see every end of the spectrum of an AI agent that's doing work for a knowledge worker, all the way up to solving the biggest business problems. And so our technology is, we enable that because we help people build data pipelines ultimately. Those pipelines can now feed AI, but they can also leverage AI for those analytics use cases. And so taking advantage of that market opportunity is obviously a big part of what we're doing and want to do. But the true value prop of Matillion doesn't change, because whether you're doing AI or you're doing analytics, you're still a human being. There's a data engineer called Matt somewhere in the world, and there's a queue of people outside his office trying to say, I would like to do something. I need this to drive a top line thing or a bottom line thing or a project or a report or whatever scale it is. And you know what? It's not easy to do that. There's not enough of those people. And our job is to make everyone more productive to do that, to make it easy, make it faster, make it better. And so whether it's AI or not AI, we're trying to make sure we stay true to that mission. AI just becomes a very disruptive opportunity where that becomes more true than ever. And so
more relevant, I guess.
More relevant, more relevant, hopefully more valuable to how the business thinks about it. Because I think people think of those things like utilities, and really it's not. It's probably the most strategic part of your architecture. It's where all your business logic is. It's where your biggest risk is, because if you feed the wrong model with the wrong data, you can get really bad answers, you can get hallucinations, you get all sorts of things. But equally, you don't want to be giving your data away to a public foundational model like a ChatGPT. So being able to control that, pass it to Snowflake where all your other data sits, that's what we're in the business of doing. So it's not add AI, it's stay true to our mission, but take advantage of a market opportunity that's really going to change all of our lives and how we work and play. And so that's where the AI opportunity becomes a net new thing for us to go do. But we're still going to do it efficiently. We're still going to do it in a smart way so that we can scale to the level we want to scale to.
So, Mark, before you leave us today, we'd like you to draw on the wealth of experience that you've had over your career, and maybe give some of our listeners 3 of your magic tips for up and coming tech entrepreneurs. What would be your 3 magic tips from Mark Johnston?
Good question. Coffee, Negroni, Paal15. So Martin and I have known, we've known each other for like 10 years, I think now.
Yeah.
And I think all of our best work and our best conversations have been over a coffee, over a Negroni, and working together. So like that's not a plug for Paal15. It's just actually strangely true, and some of the best things I've done. I'll give you my 3, my legit 3. Differentiation. I think differentiation in terms of how you position the company, the product, or the service that you're building. Haven't seen that at Microsoft with the partner team, the partner channel. Haven't seen it at Domo. Haven't seen it at Matillion. Really thinking deeply, talking to customers, talking to partners, talking to employees, talking to founders, really understanding what makes you different, and then pushing that as hard as you can and continue to stress test that. That's one. And I learned that through Domo and Matillion for sure. The second is, and I learned this from my time at Microsoft from one of the best leaders, Philip, that I've ever worked for, and it's just be brilliant at the basics. You can get caught up, that's a really funny saying from a podcast, is being high on your own supply. You can get caught up in like, oh, there's a new technology that I can use, or there's a new like channel that I can try, or there's a new way of selling. Screw that. Just be good at the basics, because if you're good at the basics, and my favorite example was when I did this thing, this program called Cloud Workshops on Microsoft, which Martin will know about. It was really, really stupidly simple. Find 20 people who have a problem. Find a partner that knows how to solve that problem. Get 10 of those 20 people in the room. Don't sell to them. Don't market to them. Educate them on how to solve that problem with a cloud platform like Azure. And rinse and repeat. And you know what? If you get the right people in a room to solve their problems and you educate them and then sell to them, goodness comes. And we did that 550 times in about 12 to 18 months. And it worked. And I always had that kind of mindset of just be brilliant at the basics. And so try not to get too caught up in sizzly, shiny new objects. And I think
flashy, nice things.
Marketers, I'm not your marketers, as I said, but marketers tend to love chasing the shiny object. And so I try to resist it. I get caught up in it too, but I try to resist it. So that's two. And then my third is, and I've learned this from my time at Matillion, definitely, is bias for action. It's encoded within one of our 6 values as a company. I was going to swear again. Getting stuff done.
Getting stuff done
and learning through it is way better than procrastination and long drawn out processes and programs. So those are my 3. Differentiation, brilliant at the basics, bias for action.
Brilliant.
I find especially the second one for me stands out. I mean, the first one, differentiation, I for me is common knowledge. Then bias to action, I'm a actionable person, I guess, myself. But then being brilliant in the basics, I think that's for me the takeaway here.
Yeah. It's worked well for me in my career, and I'm going to keep challenging myself to remember that, because it's easy to forget. But that is an important one.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us, Mark. It's been brilliant having you here. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this episode of the Paal15 Podcast, but great to have you along, and hopefully we can speak to you again soon at some point in the future.
Cool, that's that. Appreciate it. Thanks, Martin.
Yeah, thanks, Mark, for being here. Much appreciated.
If you've enjoyed this episode of the Paal15 Podcast, please do make sure to like and subscribe on your channel of choice. And for any more information you want on Paal15, visit paal15.com. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.